Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you 25 of my favorite spring and Easter DIYs, all using supplies from the Dollar Tree. Starting off, I have this adorable bunny cloche, which is a dupe for a more expensive glass version that I've seen at both Target and Kirkland's. Starting with this really easy bunny cloche, I took one of the Dollar Tree cloches that they have, put in this gold bunny I got in the dollar spot section of Target, and added some little white flowers to it, the finishing touch. I really love this ribbon. I picked it up from Temu almost a year ago, I think, and I'm just wrapping it around the cloche and tying it off in a bow. I've seen this style, or really similar to, at Target. I know that they sell the glass egg cloches, but I believe that was $5. So for this one only being $1, it's a little bit of the cheaper version. I've seen a lot of them on Instagram, so this is the more affordable way to DIY this for the spring or Easter, which is coming right up. Next up, I had purchased from the Dollar Tree their styrofoam eggs and was trying to think of a way that I wanted to use them in a DIY. So I had some really nice paper and I decided we were going to decoupage them and kind of create this nest for them. To start off, we're going to be making this little egg nest, and I have these really gorgeous scrapbooking paper books that I actually got from Temu. So to start off with this DIY, I am taking the styrofoam eggs from Dollar Tree. I ended up going with 5, but it'll just depend on what word you want to spell out, how many styrofoam eggs that you will need. And then I have one of the Cricut paper cutters, but you could just use scissors or whatever kind of paper cutter that you have. And I cut small strips out of our scrapbooking paper. And now I am just using a little bit of Mod Podge to adhere all of our paper strips to our egg. This really reminded me of, I think it was probably like back in kindergarten, when you used to blow up a balloon and then cover it in the Mod Podge glue newspaper, and then you'd pop the balloon and you had like an egg. Did anyone ever make that for Easter in school? I just really remember that vividly, the really gross soaking wet newspaper and how it would get the ink on your hands. You'll have to let me know in the comments below. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I really remember that. Now I'm just repeating the exact same process, cutting out my strips from the scrapbooking paper and using the Mod Podge to adhere them in all different directions around my egg. And then once I had applied the paper to all the eggs, I let that dry and I started working on the nest, which is really going to be a pail. Picked this up at the Dollar Tree, put a little bit of stuffing down below, but you could put plastic bags, newspaper, anything that you have, and then topped it with some Spanish moss, of course, also from the Dollar Tree. And then I set about kind of figuring out how I wanted everything to look. At first, I thought I was going to include that gold bunny, but it was a little bit smaller than I originally thought in my head, so decided to just go with the eggs. And I was pulling out some of the styrofoam eggs that I had painted, wasn't really liking how they looked, and then I remembered that I had these wood eggs from the Dollar Tree and I really liked just the natural look of them, so I ended up going with those. As a little bit of a finishing touch, I wanted to wrap the pail in some jute. This is actually the jute rope. Again, I have still not been able to find the jute rolls at my Dollar Tree. Please let me know in the comments down below if you have. It will give me some hope. I look every single time that I go. I know a lot of you have suggested looking in the automotive section, so I have found it there, but I'm just wondering if it's ever going to come back at Crafter's Square. This is the completed look. After I wrapped the handle of the pail in that jute, I placed the eggs on top and absolutely love how it turned out. This next DIY is kind of a combination of the first two. I'm using the gold bunny that I got at the dollar spot section of Target and kind of making the own nest for it. At first, I wanted this piece of wood, I picked it up at the Crafter's Square section, to resemble a slice of wood, like a slice of a tree that you would get. So I only stained around the edges, and then I kind of realized this is not looking how I pictured it in my head. I'm sure that happens a ton let me know in the comments down below if you have ever had an idea in your head and when you start doing it, you just kind of go in the complete opposite direction. So I ended up just staining the entire thing. I'm using my Waverly stain in Antique. This is always my go-to. And this is going to be the base for the bunny kind of diorama that we're making. I grabbed those styrofoam eggs from the Dollar Tree and I wrapped them completely in jute. You'll actually see me do it also a little bit later in the video using some white yarn. And now I'm just grabbing all sorts of different floral picks from my collection and trying to figure out how I want this scene to look. I really liked these smaller ones in purple and white. So I'm kind of playing around placing those and figuring out where I want those jute eggs to go. Once we had everything all placed down, I went in with the hot glue to make sure everything stayed put, and also went back to the trusty Spanish moss from Dollar Tree. I absolutely hate working with Spanish moss because it's so messy and gets everywhere, but it gives such a beautiful look. I even tried with raffia before to see if I could do something a little less messy, and it didn't have that same spring look as the Spanish moss, so I resorted to just having to clean up a mess later. Also, if you're enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit the like button. It's that thumbs up down below. And if you're enjoying it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos pretty much every week. I did go on vacation last week, so I did miss you guys, but I try to put out a new DIY video weekly, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any future videos. Last year I did a bunny hanger for my front door, so this year I'm going with the carrot theme. I always see the carrot wreath hangers for sale at the Dollar Tree, and I've never picked one up, so I thought this year would be the perfect year to try it out. If you watched last week's video, you will know that I've been having some serious trouble trying to find any of the jute rope from the Dollar Tree. So originally that's what I wanted to use, but since my stores have not had it, I ended up having to go with the nautical rope, which you can also find in the Crafter Square section. To get this to wrap around the carrot, since it wasn't a perfect circle, I did use quite a bit of hot glue, just making sure that the rope was staying in place everywhere. And I had all of this in my craft stash, but I did end up using 3 of the jute rope pieces from the Dollar Tree. Again, I would have loved if I could have used the really thin jute rope just because you get so much of it, but didn't have it, so had to improvise and use the nautical rope. I'm wrapping pretty much the entire carrot in this rope. Then for the top section of the carrot here, I took some green ribbon because I'm going to be adding some greenery, so this will kind of camouflage it. And then the carrot top section, I actually take off in just a little bit. You will see that it will disappear soon. But before I realized that I wanted to take that part of the wreath off, I started tucking in some greenery. This is eucalyptus, which of course doesn't really go with a carrot, but I didn't have anything that looked like a carrot top. And since I had a bunch of these and they were longer picks, I thought that it would look the nicest, and it's green, so it kind of goes. Then I moved on to making a bow, and this is my favorite type of bow to make because there's minimal cutting. You are going to create the center of your bow, just an easy loop. Then you take your ribbon, create what is going to be one side of the bow, pinch it in the center, then move your ribbon, make another piece of the bow, pinch it in the center, move your ribbon, and you just keep doing this again and again for however full you want your bow to be. I just wanted mine to have 2 double sides, so 4 in total loops to this bow, but you can make it as big as you would like. Again, you just have to pinch everything in the middle. It's really simple. Then you grab a zip tie and zip tie everything together. If anything, the hardest part of making this bow is getting the zip tie to work when you're trying to film and you only have 2 hands. But then once you have everything zip tied together, you can really fluff out your bow. This ribbon had wire to it, which is my favorite kind of ribbon to use because you can pull it and make it stand and stay however that you want. Then I wanted to add a tail to my ribbon, so I cut out a long piece, and I'm also going to zip tie that in the center of the bow that we have just made, and then trim off your excess zip tie. And then I dovetailed the ends and kind of placed it on my carrot to see how long that I wanted it to be. To add a little something extra, I also had this orange gingham ribbon, so I did hot glue that down onto the tails of our bow. I thought that added a fun touch, and I really love how this turned out. I am definitely leaving this on my front door for all of spring. I don't think the last DIY was too hard, but it definitely is a little bit time consuming, so I wanted to throw in this DIY because it is so quick and so easy, and most of the stuff you probably have around your house, or at least you hopefully have it around your house for the Easter season. So my Dollar Tree has not gotten in the Easter grass yet. When I'm filming this, we're still in February, so it's not crazy to think that they still don't have the Easter grass. So I actually picked through some of this that I picked up from Target during Christmas, and I'm just picking out all of the green grass, so this can be something that our eggs are laying in. At the Dollar Tree, I saw that they had these bubblegum eggs. I actually ate one and it was not good. So I felt even better that I was only going to be using this for DIY purposes because it did not taste good. Then for the top of my jar, I picked up one of these ceramic bunnies. They're actually in the Easter section at Dollar Tree, where they have toys and games for kids. It's a ceramic bunny that you can paint. I used some gold paint to paint it, and then I just hot glued it on top, and I love that it looks like it is a cloche with all of the Easter eggs. Next up, I'm going to show you guys how to create your very own bird's nest for any spring and Easter DIYs. I see these at Hobby Lobby and they can get a little bit pricey if you want to just buy a nest. Dollar Tree, I haven't seen anything like this, so let's make one. And we're going to start off this DIY by me showing you how to make the nest. So I took a brown paper bag and then I cut off one end just so I had a little less to work with. And then I just started going all the way around the brown paper bag and started rolling it down. It is a little bit hard just because you don't want to rip the brown paper bag, but once you get the hang of it, you just roll it all the way down until it kind of has this nest formation. Then for the next part, I did put on a pair of plastic gloves because the feeling of the wet Spanish moss with the Mod Podge is kind of gross. I didn't like it. So I went ahead and put on a pair of gloves. And all that you're going to do is line all around that brown paper bag formation with some Mod Podge and then stick on some Spanish moss. And you're just going to continue doing this, building up the layers. At first, I felt like it wasn't working and everything was sliding around, but once the Mod Podge dries, you'll be able to see that everything does stay in place really well. So I just kept doing the technique of layering Mod Podge, then moss, Mod Podge, then moss. And towards the end, I was a little sick of that technique, and I thought maybe a faster way to do it is to just dip the Spanish moss straight into the Mod Podge and then lay it down, and that worked too. So I did that with the top layer. I think either way would be fine. And then once you have pretty successfully built your nest, again, it doesn't look super pretty because of the Mod Podge, but once it dries, it really does look nice. And then you can see that I'm kind of just forming it and molding it with my hands to get it in a nice circular shape. Also, if you have any unruly Spanish moss that's sticking out, you can always go in with a pair of scissors after it's dried and cut off any pieces that are really sticking out. I let my little bird nest dry for 24 hours before I touched it again. So the next day I moved on to the eggs that are going to be going in our little DIY bird nest. I got these styrofoam eggs from the Dollar Tree, and then I just took 3 toothpicks and placed them in the styrofoam eggs. After painting them this light purple lavender color, I stuck the toothpicks down into some floral foam so that the eggs could fully dry. To give my eggs a speckled effect, I took some dark brown paint and a large fluffy paintbrush, and I just loaded up my paintbrush with a lot of brown paint, and then I pulled the bristles back, and it gave this really sporadic, kind of uneven, freckled look. Now that it has been over 24 hours, our nest has perfectly dried, and I even took some twigs that I found outside and added those into the nest as well. And I'm just checking to make sure that the 3 eggs fit, but I'm not going to glue those down yet, because now is the time to add all of my greenery and floral arrangements. I really liked these spring florals that the Dollar Tree just came out with. There's tons of greenery and little bits of purple and lavender, and I thought that went perfectly with the eggs, so I just put a bunch of florals in the back of the nest. Once I was happy with my selection and placement of florals, I went ahead and placed those in the nest. I was able to just kind of push them down into the nest. Now that the nest is all complete and we have decorated it with our eggs, you can definitely just display this really anywhere you want in your home, but I wanted it to be a little bit more of a sign, so I picked up chicken wire and a frame from the Dollar Tree. I painted the frame and I added the chicken wire. I will link that video up above. I did it a couple years back, and I decided to hot glue the nest right onto the front of the chicken wire. I saw something very similar at Kirkland's for about $75, so this was a challenge to myself to see if I could DIY it for less. Next up is, I think, my favorite DIY in today's video. I just love anything bunny related when it comes to spring stuff. I think it's so cute, so we are going to create our own bunny cloche. Again, I've said it again and again, I cannot find the thin jute at my store, so I had to improvise a little bit here too. But we're starting off with this bunny head. I don't even know what's around it. It's like a tinsel kind of material, and basically I am completely taking apart this bunny so that all that we have left is the actual frame of the bunny, none of this tinsel. I'm using this thicker kind of version of jute to wrap all the way around the bunny head frame. I picked this up from burlapfabrics.com a couple of years ago, and I still have quite a bit left, so it definitely served me well in this project while I am still on the hunt for jute. Again, let me know in the comments down below if you've gone to your Dollar Tree recently and seen jute. That will give me some positive ideas that maybe I will find it again. I'm speeding up this section because it's really simple. I'm just covering the entire bunny frame with this material. It was a little bit more difficult around the ears just because I had to hot glue everything off and start over, but overall a pretty easy task to do. I grabbed some of this orange buffalo check ribbon, also from the Dollar Tree. I picked it up in the fall, and that is going to be the bow that I will put on the bunny's head. But before I hot glue down my ribbon, I wanted to add a little bit of greenery, since in the cloche underneath the bunny head, we're gonna have carrots and greenery. So I just pulled off some little greenery picks that I had, and I'm hot gluing those right down in between the two of the ears before I hot glue down that bow. Instead of a cloche that the Dollar Tree does sell, I ended up just going with a glass jar that the Dollar Tree also sells, and I flipped it upside down. The bunny head is going to go on top, but underneath I put some of those jute carrots in, and I also had some other little greenery picks, so I just kind of stuck those in too. And then to secure the bunny head, I took some hot glue before placing that down. For the final touch, I went back in with a little bit more of that rope just around the base of the bunny's head because you could see some of the glass, and I want it to be nice and cohesive, so that was the last touch that I made on this bunny cloche. If you're enjoying today's video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, the like button down below. It really helps out my channel, and also don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on a future video. It's a really simple one. You might have seen it kind of taking over Instagram in the past couple of weeks. I've seen it a bunch and wanted to try it out myself. So we are making a peep vase. Super easy. All you need is a vase and some peeps and flowers. If you're using fresh flowers, you're going to want two vases, one that's smaller than the second so you can place it inside, and then you'll slip the peeps down in between the two. That way you don't actually want to put water in this vase because the peeps will just melt. They are marshmallows. But for this one, I'm showing you if you want to use fake flowers, you can just put the peeps right down in there with them. So I'm just lining this entire vase with the peeps. Again, if you're using real flowers, make sure that you have a smaller vase that the stems will actually go into with the water. But if you just want to use fake flowers, or maybe put something in there that's not flowers, maybe just some other type of greenery, then this method is going to work perfect for you. I'm going to show you guys how to make this egg frame. I saw something very similar at Kirkland's, so I wanted to recreate it using Dollar Tree supplies. And it's actually pretty easy. So you're going to start off with these foam eggs that you can get in a pack at Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be painting them using some folk art paint here. This color is lavender. That will be my purple egg. And whenever I am painting something, especially if it's styrofoam, I just stick one of the bamboo skewers in it. That way it's just a lot easier to paint, and I don't don't have the eggs rolling around. Then I can just stick the bamboo skewers into some floral foam and the eggs can dry. Again, I don't have to worry about them rolling around. I also went in with the shade Ballet Slipper by Waverly for the pink eggs, and I also made a couple of white ones with some brown speckles on them that I used just by loading up my paintbrush with brown paint and just flicking the bristles back, and you get that speckled effect. Then I am taking my picture frame. This is from the Dollar Tree, and I had some white ribbons on hand. That's what we're going to use to string the eggs up. And I'm just kind of laying out the design that I want right now. I'm hot gluing the ribbon onto the top of the styrofoam eggs and just spacing everything out, seeing how I like the pinks and the purples and the whites and how I want all of those ribbons to lay. Once you have a rough idea of how you want your design to be, I flipped my picture frame back over and we're going to start hot gluing the ribbons into place. I just placed a line of hot glue up at the top, and now I'm just going in again, kind of trying to figure out the lengths that I want and just pressing the ribbons into the hot glue until I have all of them laid down. Then once the hot glue is dried and I like where the positioning is, I went in with my scissors to trim off that excess ribbon up at the top, so of course that wasn't showing through. I added a big burlap bow to the center of the frame with some hot glue. If you want a tutorial on how to make this bow, I actually did one in my previous video that I had out last week, so I will link that above if you want the bow tutorial. Then for the center of the bow, I love the wood cutouts that the Dollar Tree has. They have bunnies and carrots and eggs. So I just took a little bit of stain on this wood bunny and then placed that at the center of the bow. And then the last step, I wanted to pull in the purple from the eggs and have an extra spring touch. So I love these lavender picks from the Dollar Tree. I just placed these behind the bow. Next up, no Easter DIY video is complete if we don't have some sort of carrot themed DIY. A couple of years ago, I did a bunny bait bag, and this is kind of a variation on this. It's really easy, and you only really need about 2 Dollar Tree supplies. So I started off with the bunny treat bags. These come in a 3-pack at the Dollar Tree, and they're so versatile. I even ended up using these for like Valentine's Day DIYs. You just turn it inside out so you don't see the bunny face. So they are great to pick up even if you're not going to be using it for spring or Easter. I took a little bit of brown paint to dirty up the bunny bag since this is supposed to look like it is coming straight from the farm. I rolled down the bag and now I'm making my sign. It's just going to say bunny treats. I'm just using a plain old Sharpie to write this, and then I'm not the greatest with my freehanding, so I did go in with a colored pencil before I actually started cutting to create this tag, and then I just cut it out and also hole punched it because I'm going to need a hole to thread some of the jute through. And again, this is supposed to be like it's coming from a farm, so all of my paintbrushes were still drying, they were wet, so I just dipped my finger in some of this Waverly Stain and Antique to dirty up our tag before I went ahead and hole punched it. In the previous clip, I put a little bit of filling down into the bunny treat bag just so that the carrots would be peeking out a little bit more. But before I add in the carrots, I'm taking some of this thicker jute and wrapping it around the bunny treat bag before tying off the tag. And then I'm going back into the carrots. I had them just placed in the bag, but they were falling out and kind of wobbling all around. So I did end up adding a little bit of hot glue just to make sure that everything stayed in place. And really the finishing touch, you could use some of the Spanish moss that the Dollar Tree sells. I had some of this raffia, so I just tucked this down in, and I really love how this turned out. And you're even gonna see a variation of it in the last DIY in today's video. So make sure you stay tuned to see what that DIY is gonna look like. Next up is my favorite craft in today's video. It's a bunny crate. I think it came out really adorable, and you could fill it with lots of stuff. It doesn't have to be the styrofoam eggs like I'm going to show you guys how I used. You could also add in some of the carrots or really anything else that you find at the Dollar Tree. Starting off with one of the wood crates you can find in the Crafter's Square section. I covered this in brown paint and then I distressed it with some white paint. Also, we're going to be using this bunny cutout. So this is from last year, but I have seen them in stores still for this year. And last year I painted it and distressed it, as you can see, and I put it back in my craft stash because I knew that I'd probably want to reuse it for this year too. So I'm giving it just a little bit of a makeover. I loved how it was painted, but I'm adding in a little bit of greenery and also a twine bow before taking my hot glue gun and hot gluing it to the end of our wood crate. The next part is really a choose your own adventure, if you will, because you can fill this crate up with whatever you want. I also think it'd be really cute to add in greenery and flowers, lots of, pretty spring floral picks that the Dollar Tree has. But for this DIY, I put a little bit of stuffing down in the bottom of the crate so I wouldn't use up as much raffia. And then I placed the raffia on top of that. And I had some extra eggs that I painted from the first DIY in the purple and the pink and the white. So I just placed those in the crate. I toyed around with using some of the larger eggs that the Dollar Tree sells, especially the speckled ones. Those looked really cute, but I liked that you could just fit more of the tiny ones in, so I did end up going with the small styrofoam egg. Moving on to our next DIY, I actually ended up using a glass container that used to have a Costco dessert in it, but if you don't have any glass containers laying around your house, you could also use one of the small clay pots that the Dollar Tree sells in the gardening section. So we're going to be transforming this glass jar into a bunny. So I painted the jar and then placed that aside, and I moved on to the bow that I'm going to be using on the bunny. So I made a bow out of some of the almost like a crochet looking ribbon, some of the jute ribbon, and then I cut the lace stuff, which I'll show you how I use that a little bit later. Then I moved on to making our bunny's whiskers. I only had gold wire. If you have a brown wire, that will actually be a little bit easier because you won't have to paint it, which will save you a step. But I only had the gold, so I wrapped it around a paintbrush a bunch of times and then pulled it off, and you had this really nice coil. Then once I slid that off of the paintbrush, I kind of pulled the coils apart a little bit to give it the look that I wanted for the whiskers. I took one of these heart cutouts that I got from Valentine's Day at the Dollar Tree and I placed it upside down on the jar. That is going to be our bunny's nose. Then I'm using some of my burlap ribbon to create the bunny ears. I just freehanded the ears. I didn't draw them out first or make a pattern. And then for the second ear, I did use the first one kind of as a pattern and just cut that out so that it would be a little bit similar to the other one before hot gluing it down on top of our glass jar with a little bit of hot glue. And then I moved into our bow. So I'm laying down those white pieces of ribbon first, and they're going to be too long, but don't worry, we're going to go back in and trim it. Basically creating an X bow with the two pieces of the white ribbon and also with the lace ribbon. And then for the final touch in the center, I added the jute and crocheted bow, and then I cut off the white and lace bit so it was a little bit shorter and not hanging down our bunny. Then I am starting to add the whiskers, so I placed some hot glue on the side of the heart and then stuck the wire whiskers down in that. And once the glue had fully dried, I was able to pull the whiskers a little bit more, and I ended up doing 3 coils on each side. I could have painted the whiskers before I hot glued them on, but I wasn't sure if I would like the gold or not. Turns out I didn't like it, so I did end up going over it with some brown paint to cover the gold up. And I also wanted to distress the bunny nose a little bit, again, make it look like the bunny was hanging out in the carrot patch. The last step for this clay pot DIY, I did take a black marker and I added some eyes to the bunny and some little eyelashes because this is our girl bunny after all with her nice bow, and I absolutely love the way that this turned out. I promised you earlier that we would be repurposing 2 parts of the DIYs in today's video, so I'm going to show you an alternative way to use some of the supplies that I've already shown you. Starting off with the crate that we used earlier in the video, it's the same type of wood crate from the Dollar Tree, filled with the stuffing and the raffia, only this time I cut out this cute carrot patch design with my Cricut and I placed that onto the wood crate. You can pick up these bunny bums in a 2-pack from the Dollar Tree, and I want it to look like the bunny was diving into this crate full of carrots. So I'm carefully kind of trying to figure out where I want that to go, and I realized I actually needed to put the carrots in first. So remember how I told you the bunny bag was very versatile, you can flip them inside out. So I made a second carrot bag and flipped the bunny bag inside out, so it was just like a plain burlap bag, you didn't see the bunny face, and I placed carrots and raffia in that one. First up, we're going to create this standing egg sign. First item that you need is one of the egg wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. I like this one. It had like kind of a faux shiplap look to it, but I covered it in some paper that I found at Hobby Lobby. Then I cut out 2 eggs out of some craft board that I have. It's a little bit less stiff than cardboard, but more stiff than cardstock, so it stands up very nicely. And originally, my idea was to do a trio of eggs, so I started to work. I was going to do a yellow buffalo check on this egg, and I just wanted to include it to show you all that I definitely do make a lot of mistakes when crafting. Unfortunately for this one, when I removed all of the tape after I had done the buffalo check, I didn't do a dark enough color in the second time, so when I pull it away, it looks like there's just 2 colors of paint when there actually are 3. I should have chosen a darker one, and it just came out terrible. So I scrapped that entire idea, and instead we're just going to be doing a duo of eggs. So for that one that I cut out of the craft board, I went over it with some pink cardstock, and I'm going to be using that galvanized bunny that I got off a different Dollar Tree sign. To turn this into a standing sign, it's super easy. I just took some of those wood Jenga blocks from the Dollar Tree and I placed that behind our larger egg sign, and now it's able to stand all on its own. I hot glued the pink egg onto the wood egg sign, and I added one more tumbling tower block. That's what they're called at the Dollar Tree. You can find them in the children's toy section. They're basically Jenga blocks, and just adding a second one added a little bit more support, and the finishing touch was taking that galvanized bunny and putting it onto the pink egg. I absolutely love the way this turned out. I'm definitely going to be displaying it in my dining room for the spring and Easter season. This next DIY is a dupe. I saw something very similar at Kirkland's. I think it was about $30, so I wanted to dupe it using all Dollar Tree supplies, and it was actually really easy, so I'm glad I didn't spend the money at Kirkland's. I took a wood sign from the Dollar Tree, and because I'm going to be adding those beads all around it, I first wanted to lay down just around the corners, kind of like a frame, some dark brown paint. This one is called Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel. It is always my go-to dark brown paint. So I just took the paintbrush and I'm going all the way around. That way when I lay down my beads, it will have this nice dark brown background. I picked up this wood bead wreath from Dollar Tree, and I also had some more wood beads from some garland that I had actually picked up in the summertime. So the wreath didn't quite cover the whole sign, but it almost did. And I'm just peeling these off of the wreath and laying them down. This is when I wasn't sure if there would be enough in the wood wreath, so I didn't start hot gluing anything yet. But luckily I did find some more of these kind of square wood beads in my craft stash, so I knew that I had enough to make the entire sign. Now that I had all of my wood beads laid out, it was time to start hot gluing them into place. I just kind of put down a little bit of the hot glue and then went in with my beads, filling in all of those sections. Next step is painting all of the wood beads. I went in with a stippling brush because you really want to get in between each of them so you don't have that natural wood color shining through. So I went all the way around the entire frame with the same dark brown color that we used earlier. Once I had covered all the beads and let that dry for a bit, I went back in with some painter's tape. I'm going to be taping out the center section. I want the center to be white. So first off, I just went all the way around. I love this painter's tape. It's from the Dollar Tree and I think it works great. So I just went around taping that out. The next part is super easy. I'm just painting this section white. My color that I'm using is white chalk paint by Waverly. It's my go-to. You don't have to go in with too many coats, so that is pretty much always the white that I'm using. You'll see me in just a moment once the paint has dried and I've removed the painter's tape, go in with something that I cut out using my Cricut. If you type into your Cricut design space, "when flowers bloom," this phrase will come up. To accessorize the frame, I did put a bow up at the top. This is one that I had made previously, but I will link above the video where I go in depth how to make this bow using zip ties. I really like it because there's minimal cutting involved, so if you make a mistake, you don't have lots of pieces of ribbon laying around. Then, because this quote is about flowers, I wanted to add some in, so I had these little tea rose picks from the Dollar Tree in both this pinky peach color and purple, so I just added a cluster of 3 up at the top on the bow. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands for crafting and waiting for paint to dry, this next DIY is definitely for you because it's super quick and easy but adds the cutest Easter touch to any home. Not too many supplies in this DIY, but we're going to start off with making a bow to go on the bottom of the candle holder. I grabbed some of this orange gingham ribbon from the Dollar Tree and one of those little carrots off of that garland strip that I just showed you as the centerpiece of the bow. To create the holder for our candle, I took a glass candlestick from the Dollar Tree and then one of these really small glass bowls that I also got in a pack from the Dollar Tree. Sure what it's for, maybe sauces or something. And the main piece are going to be these wood bunnies. I got these in a pack in the Easter section of the Dollar Tree, and this is going to be really the main element of the DIY. I'm using some hot glue to glue the bunnies all the way around this glass bowl. Let me know in the comments down below if your stores are stocked with the Easter and spring DIY stuff yet, or even the decor, the signs, all of that. I have not seen any of the new florals in my stores, but we do have the signs and a couple of the craft supplies, but not all of it yet. I'm hoping in the next week or two, now that Valentine's Day is over, the stores will get more stocked with supplies. To finish off this DIY, I hot glued the bow to the base of our candlestick holder, and then I just grabbed a candle that I already had in my stash and placed that in the center. I love the way that this turned out. I think it is such a cute and really quick DIY to make. Pretty much every year, or at least in the last 3, the Dollar Tree has come out with these bunny wood signs, and the possibilities are really endless with the ways that you can DIY them. But for this video, I just wanted to do something pretty simple, so I started off with covering the bunny in some scrapbooking paper. I did pick this up from Hobby Lobby, but I think the bunny is really cute. It, again, kind of has that faux shiplap look. It's the wood with the white on it, so even if you didn't have scrapbooking paper, I think you could kind of just keep it as a plain white wood bunny, and this would still be a very nice DIY. I'm using the jumbo glue stick that I got at the Dollar Tree. I feel like this thing will never run out and it always works really well, so I definitely recommend them. And I just used the glue stick to adhere the scrapbooking paper onto the bunny. Now onto accessorizing the bunny. I am first going to show you guys how to make a bow. It's really easy. You just kind of layer or fold the ribbon, and it reminds me of ribbon candy. And as you're folding it, you'll kind of see how the bow is starting to take shape. I'll show you guys one more time. So I'm taking my piece of ribbon and again, just folding it like ribbon candy, zigzagging maybe you would say. So you just fold it however thick you want your bow to be. I just wanted it to have 4 loops total, 2 on each side. So I did it twice, and then you just cinch it in the middle. It's super easy. Unfortunately, again, like I told you guys, I am out of jute and I have not seen any at my stores. So I ended up taking this orange twine. Doesn't really matter anyway because I'm going to be covering it up. I tied the bow together and dovetailed the ends and just kind of pulled at the bow, manipulated it a little bit to give it that fluffy look that I liked. I love the wood cutouts from Dollar Tree. This one came in bunnies, eggs, and I think carrots I even have. So I placed the bunny at the center of our bow to hide that orange ribbon that I had to use. And then the final touches, really easy, a cotton tail. And then I made a little necklace for our bunny using some string, wood beads, and one of those jute carrots that the Dollar Tree always comes out with for the spring season. The next DIY I used just with some scrap pieces and items that I had laying around my craft room. It's really easy to do. The first thing that you're going to need is either a wood block, or what I have is one of the foam dice that you can pick up in the children's toy section of the Dollar Tree. I painted this white, but you could do it brown too if you wanted to do a brown bunny. For the bunny whiskers, I took a wood bead and some raffia and threaded the raffia through so you have the bunny's nose, and then of course the raffia is going to be the whiskers. Next, I went into my ribbon collection. I took some of this burlap ribbon and I'm making burlap ears for the bunny, and I just freehanded how I wanted the bunny ears to look. If you want something more precise, you might want to take a marker and kind of draw it out before you cut it, but I just kind of winged it, and I wanted the bunny to have polka dot ears, so I took the back of a paintbrush and some white paint and just used that as a stamping tool to stamp some polka dots onto the bunny. I put the bunny ears to the side to dry and moved on to the accessories for the bunny. So I hot glued on the nose and the whiskers, and I also made a really easy bow to go on top of our bunny's head. Once the ears were dry, I hot glued those onto the back of my foam dice, and then the finishing touch was adding eyes onto our bunny. You could of course use black paint for this, but I just wanted to do something quick, so I grabbed a Sharpie to make out my bunny's eyes. I'm going to be using a lot of editing magic in this first DIY so that I don't waste too much of your time just showing you how to paint and add scrapbooking paper to two of the Dollar Tree's tag signs. I just used scrapbooking paper from Hobby Lobby on one of the signs, and then I used some Waverly white chalk paint and then distressed it with a little bit of brown paint on the front tag sign. And now I'm just trying to figure out how I want the tags to be. And once I figured out how I want them lined up, overlapping on one another, I just took a pencil to mark out exactly where I want to hot glue down that first sign onto the scrapbook paper one. And the real trick when you're making this overlapping tag sign is just to make sure that you really push down with your hands to make sure that they are both adhered properly. The Dollar Tree has these tag signs out all the time, but for some reason, I'm not sure if my store just had a box in stock, but a lot of the summer ones that I know from last year, they have had hanging around. So that's where I got a lot of these. And I wanted a big bow at the top of my tag sign, so I grabbed some burlap fabric ribbon and went ahead and made that. If you want a tutorial on exactly how to make this type of a ribbon, I will go ahead and link it above. I did a very thorough tutorial on this during Christmas time that I think explains it really well, so again, I'll be sure to link that above. To match the scrapbooking paper on the behind tag sign, I took one of these wooden carrots from the Dollar Tree and covered it in a buffalo check scrapbooking paper with a little bit of smaller checks, and also added a jute bow. Then to finish off the tag sign, I added some vinyl decals that say Farm Fresh Carrot Patch. The next DIY might just be the cutest one in the whole video, and the main supply is a sock. I'm starting off with one sock from the Dollar Tree. This pack at the Dollar Tree actually came with 3 pairs of socks, which I thought was a really good deal. So now I have 5 more single socks that I can use in another DIY. But I'm taking this sock, of course, a white one because my bunny is going to be white, and I am filling it with some of these glass beads that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, but you could also do rocks that you find in your backyard or any other weighted item, maybe even some pennies, and I'm putting that in the bottom of the sock just so that the bunny can stand up on its own. Next, I took some stuffing or filling that I have from Joann Fabrics. I have a really big bag of it. I got it for pretty cheap, and I reuse it a lot for different projects. But you could also use some plastic grocery store bags that would also work as a filling. And I'm adding more towards the bottom and still a good amount of filling towards the top, but a little bit less because the head of our bunny, I want it to be a bit smaller, and that's of course going to be at the top, and then I want his body to be a bit more round. And to create this division, I'm just taking a clear hair elastic. You could also tie it with jute or even a rubber band. And I'm putting that over the sock and then pulling it down so that it creates a division between the stuffing and the socks, so that I have this larger circle down at the bottom for the bunny's body and this smaller circle up at the top to be the bunny's head. To complete the bunny's head, I'm taking another of those clear elastic hair ties and putting that at the top of the bunny's head. And the next step is going to determine the length of the bunny's ears. I wanted mine really long, so I left the sock at the length that it was. But if you want some shorter bunny ears, then you are going to trim off where the cuff of the sock is, just to make it a little bit shorter. But again, I wanted some pretty long ears, so I'm grabbing my fabric scissors and cutting right down the center at the top of our sock. And you can really start to see form the shape of the bunny's ears. I liked them long and floppy, but they weren't quite in the shape of a bunny's ears, so I grabbed each side again and cut them at an angle, just so that they had more of that angular shape of a bunny's ears. And you'll notice that when I did cut, it became a lot stiffer and was able to stand up on its own. I didn't have a bunch of fabric flopping all over the place, but if you wanted it to be even more secure, you could add some hot glue or maybe a little bit of tape on the inside of the bunny ears, just to make sure that they stayed together and stood up. But the sock I picked from the Dollar Tree was working really well for me, and they were able to stand up and stay together on their own. Next, I moved on to accessorizing our little sock bunny. So I grabbed some of this really pretty plaid ribbon from, of course, the Dollar Tree, and wrapped it around what I would call his neck, where his head and his body of the sock meet, and just tied that around and fixed it with a bow before trimming off the long sides of the ribbon so they weren't longer than his actual body. For the face, I went really simple, just taking a black marker and adding 2 little eyes and then an X for his nose mouth area. But you could get really creative with this. You could add some googly eyes. You could take some yarn pieces and add whiskers to the bunny. This would be a fun one to do with kids, where you can create the bunny with them and then let them decide how they want to decorate the face. Even though you can't really see the cottontail in the beginning picture, I of course needed my bunny to have a cottontail, so I grabbed one of my glue dots from the Dollar Tree and just adhered a little pom-pom to his back. This spring DIY only needed a few supplies to transform it into a fun and colorful spring craft. When I saw this galvanized bunny sign in my Dollar Tree, I had absolutely no idea what I was going to make with it, but it was the first time that I had seen it at my store, and I've only seen it like once since I've been back, so I knew it was a pretty hot item, and it just kind of sat in my craft stash for a couple weeks while I was thinking of ideas. With the galvanized edge, it's kind of hard to turn something that's a bit more modern into a farmhouse DIY. But I decided to only use the galvanized part on the edges, almost like a frame. And then on the center area of this bunny sign, I grabbed some white paint and painted it. So again, it just looked like it had that galvanized edged finish. After I painted everything white, I did go in with a little bit of pink paint just to accentuate the bunny's ears. I've been absolutely loving this pink paint for spring. It is called Seashell Pink by Folk Art, and I'm only mentioning it because I have literally used it in almost every single video I have done this spring. I'm almost out of the bottle of paint, so if you're ever at the store and you see this one, I really suggest picking it up. Might not look much, but it works really great for spring crafting. Once my paint was dry, I moved on to adding some floral embellishments. These are wood flowers from Solo Wood Flowers. I have a couple bags of them, and I chose the pink, kind of this off blue-green one, and then an ivory toned one. And these are going to be the main floral arrangement in the corner of our bunny. I also know that the Dollar Tree has had some wood flowers in the past, but you could also pick them up at Michael's and even Joann's. And I really like the way that the flowers looked, but I wanted to add a little bit of greenery as well. So I had this purple and greenery floral pick from the Dollar Tree. So I just picked off little duos of petals from it and these small purple flowers that were also on it, and hot glued those two together and then added them into the blank spaces where the florals were so that there wasn't any empty space. I wanted the flowers to look like they had leaves and were very abundant and, not too sparse. I didn't want too much white or blank area. I really liked the thicker jute hanger that the sign already came with, so to complete this DIY, I went ahead and just strung that back through the holes in the bunny's ears, using some free paint sticks as a fence. The most important supply in this DIY are a set of paint sticks. I actually picked these up from Home Depot. If you go to the paint section, you can usually get them for free. I asked if they sold them and the guy just gave me a bunch of them, which was really nice. And then a couple of the paint sticks are actually ones that I had and I have used before. I'm taking the shade Elephant by Waverly and I am painting all of the paint sticks. Eventually, we will take some white paint and really distress them. So the gray is really going to be more of the secondary color. They're going to be mainly white, but just to get a good base down, I am laying down the gray color. All right, and now comes the main color. I am taking some white paint and very heavy-handedly distressing these paint sticks. I really want white to be the main color, just with bits of gray poking through. So for this, I cut out a bunny and I could not find any Easter stuff in my Dollar Trees except for some jute carrots and a couple wood ornaments. They just really haven't come out with the Easter stuff yet, but I already wanted to start decorating. So I kind of had to make this on my own. I found a bunny silhouette image on Google and then I printed it out and traced it onto this. It's called a craft board. It is thicker than a paper, but not as thick as cardboard. If you see it in your Hobby Lobby or Michael's, it again is called craft board. To cover the board, I traced the bunny out onto a white washcloth and then cut it out before hot gluing it. I liked using the washcloth better than scrapbooking paper, not only for the texture, I thought it resembled more of a bunny's fur, but also you didn't have to be quite as precise when you were cutting it out. There were a few sections where I might have cut a bit too much, but because it was a washcloth, I was able to pull and stretch the fabric a little bit to make sure that none of the craft board was peeking out from underneath of our washcloth. All right, so now is the really exciting part because we are going to create our fence. And I didn't get too precise. I didn't bring out the measuring tape. I just kind of eyeballed how far apart I wanted the paint sticks to be. Two of the paint sticks, I cut off that area where it kind of bows in. And so that's how I knew how long I wanted my fence to be and how much space needed to be in between each of them. And then once I knew how long or wide the fence needed to be, I just kind of eyeballed and spaced out the paint sticks from there. After that, I hot glued down our bunny into the center lower part of the fence and just pressed down to make sure that he stayed in place. Now we are going to finish off our bunny fence with some embellishments. I got this amazing super long strand of wood beads in the fall, but I have seen in some lucky people's Dollar Trees they are coming out with these again. So if you see them, definitely pick them up. And to act as a thread, I took these really tiny scissors from the Dollar Tree and wrapped the jute around them so that I could thread it through the jute carrot. And then on the other end, I also placed 3 of the small wooden Dollar Tree beads. So once I had both of my carrot bead garlands ready to go, it was time to tie them on opposite ends of the fence. There are so many different ways to use paint sticks. I'm definitely going to be using them in future DIYs. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever used them in a craft project. Next up is a very easy to make rustic spring DIY using some unlikely supplies from the garden section of the Dollar Tree. The first step in this project is going to be painting these styrofoam Easter eggs. I said it earlier, my Dollar Tree doesn't have a ton of Easter or even spring stuff out yet, but luckily I did snag this bag of styrofoam eggs. I know that they came out with the craft eggs last year too, so I was happy to see them again. I did paint them white even though they already came white, and then I was just flicking some of this dark brown paint onto them to give it a speckled effect. While I waited for the paint to dry on the eggs, I moved on to the picture frame, which is going to be the main base for this DIY. So I took out all of the backing and the glass from the picture frame, and also you could see these little black stoppers that hold the contents in place. So I just took some needle nose pliers and just pulled those out. They come out really easy in the Dollar Tree frames so that they wouldn't be seen. Then I took my Waverly white chalk paint and painted the entire brown frame in this white color. And I did end up using about 2 coats to make sure that the entire frame was completely opaque and covered. And to turn it from this modern white into a nice rustic farmhouse DIY, I am of course distressing it with my favorite dark brown paint from Apple Barrel in Burnt Umber. I also took an Apple Barrel chip brush. This is really nice to use while you're distressing, and I am just dirtying this up, making sure that I keep my brush going in one direction. So I am just going all around the edges and the center area, adding in that brown color. So now we're taking the unlikely supply that is found in the Dollar Tree garden section. I've seen this each spring, so keep your eye out because they go really quick, and it is chicken wire. But of course, we're not going to be using it in gardening or to keep any chickens at bay. We're going to be using it for decor. And I am just adding hot glue to keep all of this in place. And the nice thing about the hot glue is that it was very flexible and pliable, so I was able to really mold the wreath and make sure that it had a nice shape and wasn't turning into an oval rather than a circular wreath. And to finish off the wreath, I took some raffia and just made a double bow before hot gluing that on to the top section of our egg wreath. I really love this DIY because it's a very subtle hint of spring to your regular decor. So if you're not huge into seasonal decor, I think this is a really nice way to incorporate spring. The next DIY requires very minimal supplies, and the main one you can actually find in your own backyard. Like I said in the first DIY, I just haven't been able to find very much Easter decor or Easter craft supplies at my Dollar Tree. And one of the things that I was really looking for was a sign that had a bunny cutout on it, but we still only have Valentine's Day stuff up at my Dollar Trees. Let me know in the comments below if you've been getting any Easter stuff in. So just like the first DIY, I found a bunny silhouette image on Google and just used that to trace out this bunny shape on some craft board. So that's what I'm going to be using today. And like I said, also, the main supply in this is going to be sticks that I just found outside in my backyard. My puppy helped me. He was very good at finding the sticks, but not so good at letting me take the sticks from his mouth. I ended up just hot gluing down some of the sticks, and I used hot glue here. One, because I got impatient and didn't want to wait the 30 minutes to an hour for the puzzle saver glue to dry. And second, for the ears, I really wanted to make sure that everything was down and secure. So this is when I switched over to the hot glue gun, and you can see I took my miter shears, my favorite ones off Amazon. I always have them linked down below in my Amazon favorites. And once I had all of the sticks lined up, I just took the miter shears and cut off any excess pieces of the twigs and the sticks. And this worked out really well. And then for the second ear, a lot of the pieces that I had cut off from the first ear fit pretty perfect onto that second ear. This was a very rustic, outdoorsy rabbit, so I wanted to add a little bit of greenery, some florals and foliage to him. So I took some little bits of a spring floral pick that I actually had from last year. I hope they bring these out again. And I added a couple of green leaves underneath the bow, as well as some really pretty purple flowers. Now we are going to move on to what will be displaying our twig or stick bunny. So I grabbed one of the medium-sized canvases from the Crafters Square section at the Dollar Tree, and then I took some scrap burlap that I had. I used it in a Valentine's Day DIY, and I had some left over. And I'm going to be covering the canvas with the burlap. I originally wanted to do a paint stick border so it looked like some more faux wood, but the paint sticks were a little bit too large for this smaller canvas and it would take up too much. You wouldn't really see the burlap. So I went into my craft stash and I saw that I had these really large skewers from the Dollar Tree, some wooden skewers. I believe they're for s'mores, so you don't have to get too close to the fire. And I thought this would make a really good smaller border than the paint sticks or even rulers. So similar to the first DIY, I'm using this dark gray color called Elephant to paint the skewers, and then I distress them with some white paint. And once again, using my handy dandy miter shears to cut down the skewers to fit the canvas so it would frame it really nicely. I put down the top one first and then had the two on the left and the right coming down off of the top one, and then finished it off by hot gluing the bottom. And of course, the last step in this DIY is putting some hot glue on the back of our stick bunny and then hot gluing that down to the center of the frame. I'm going to show you how to make this adorable bucket full of bunnies using some styrofoam eggs that you can find at your Dollar Tree. For this DIY, I'm going to be making 2 of these jute bunnies and 1 using some white yarn. So we'll start off with the brown jute bunny. I am taking one of the styrofoam craft eggs from the Dollar Tree, and unfortunately, they of course did not come with bunny ears, so I had to make those. I just cut some bunny ears out of something that's called craft board. As I am wrapping my egg/bunny in the jute, I just wanted to give a little shout out since this DIY kind of gets me in the Easter spirit. I did start an Etsy shop. I had mentioned it a couple of videos back, and I had some Valentine's Day items in my shop. I just wanted to really quickly plug 2 new items that are in my shop just because they're Easter related and kind of go with this overall bunny themed video. First, I have these really cute bunny bags. You can put jelly beans in them, gift cards, give them to your kids or maybe teachers. These are a really cute item. And then I also have, similar to the item that I had for Valentine's Day, a hot pad in a mint green color with a variety of Easter sayings. The little bunny bums are all the rage, so I took a small little white pom-pom and just hot glued it to the bottom back of the bunny to be their little cotton tail. I did the exact same process with some white yarn. I didn't want to show you guys that because it was literally the exact same thing that I did with the jute, so I figured you didn't need to see that twice. And I actually liked the yarn a little bit better just because I didn't have any of those frays, so I didn't have to trim anything. You can also use some more non-traditional colors, some bright Easter ones. Of course, it doesn't have to be exactly like mine in the white yarn or the jute. I grabbed one of the tins from the Dollar Tree, and instead of filling it with floral foam because I'm trying to save my floral foam for a future project, I just stuffed down some scrap fabric that I had to fill up the tin and then placed some raffia on top before grabbing my bunnies and trying to position them in the tin bucket. I also added 2 of these jute carrots. but the bunnies were falling over a little bit in the raffia, so I had a bunch of skewers from the Dollar Tree. So I just cut those down to size and put those inside of the styrofoam bunnies as well as the carrots too. The skewers were a really great way to get all of them into position, and even though I wasn't sticking them into floral foam, I just kind of wiggled them down in between the folds of the fabric, and that worked just as well as floral foam for me.